Yehovah, please fill me with the Ruach HaKodesh, that I may speak your written words with boldness to those who listen. I ask all these things in Yeshua HaMashiach's name, amen. We'll start with the Shema, listen and obey. Children of Yehovah, pay careful attention and respond. Yehovah is our power and authority. Yehovah works in unity with himself, and you shall act upon your love to Yehovah with your power and authority, with your thoughts in mind, with your entire body, and with all the muchness that you have. Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. Hand, behold, nail, behold. Genesis chapter 41. At the end of 2 years, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing beside the Nile River, and there came up out of the river 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they began feeding in swamp grass. After them came up out of the river 7 more cows, miserable looking and lean, and they stood by the other cows at the edge of the river. Then the miserable looking and lean cows ate up the 7 sleek fat cows. At this point, Pharaoh woke up, but when he went to sleep again and dreamt a second time, 7 full ripe ears of grain grew out of a single stalk. After them, 7 ears, thin and blasted by the east wind, sprang up, and the thin ears swallowed up the 7 full ripe ears. Then Pharaoh woke up and realized it had been a dream. In the morning, he found himself so upset that he summoned all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today reminds me of something wherein I am at fault." Pharaoh was angry with his officials and put me in the prison in the house of the captain of the guard, me and the chief baker. One night, both I and he had dreams, and each man's dream had its own meaning. There was a young man, a Hebrew, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us. He interpreted each man's dream individually, and it came about as he interpreted to us. It was restored to my office, and he was hanged. Then Pharaoh summoned Joseph. They brought him up quickly out of the dungeon. He shaved himself, changed his clothes, and came up into Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream. There is no one who can interpret it. But I've heard it said about you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph answered Pharaoh, "It isn't in me." God will give Pharaoh an answer that will set his mind at peace. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream, I stood at the edge of a river. There came up out of the river 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they began feeding in the swamp grass. After them, there came up out of the river 7 more cows, poor and miserable looking and lean. I've never seen such bad-looking cows in all the land of Egypt. Then the lean and miserable-looking cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. But after they had eaten them up, one couldn't tell that they had eaten them, because they were as miserable-looking as before. At this point, I woke up, but I dreamed again and saw 7 full, ripe ears of grain growing out of a single stalk. After them, 7 ears, thin and blasted by the east wind, sprang up, and the thin ears swallowed up the 7 ripe ears. I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain it to me." Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are the same. God has told Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears of grain are 7 years. The dreams are the same. Likewise, the 7 lean and miserable-looking cows that came up after them are 7 years, and also the 7 empty, blasted by the east wind, there will be 7 years of famine. This is what I told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Here it is. There will be 7 years of abundance throughout the whole land of Egypt, but afterwards there will come 7 years of famine, and Egypt will forget all the abundance. The famine will consume the land, and the abundance will not be known in the land because of the famine that will follow, because it will be truly terrible. Why was the dream doubled for Pharaoh? Because the master has been fixed by God, and God will shortly cause it to happen. Therefore, Pharaoh should look for a man both discreet and wise to put in charge of the land of Egypt. Pharaoh should do this, and he should appoint supervisors over the land to receive a 20% tax on the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should gather all the food produced during these good years coming up and set aside grain under the supervision of Pharaoh to be used for the food in the cities. And they should store it. This will be in the land's food supply for the 7 years of famine that will come over the land of Egypt, so that the land will not perish as a result of the famine. The proposal seemed good both to Pharaoh and to all his officials. Pharaoh said to his officials, "Can we find anyone else like him? The Spirit of God lives in him." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You will be in charge of my household. All the people will be ruled by what you say. Only when I rule from my throne will I be greater than you." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Here, I place you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, had him clothed in fine linen with a gold chain around his neck, and had him ride on his second-best chariot. And they cried before him, "Bow down!" Thus he placed him on charge of the whole land of Egypt. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I, Pharaoh, decree that without your approval, no one is to raise his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh called Joseph by the name Sfanat Panach, and gave him as his wife Osnat, the daughter of Pharaoh, priest of On. Thus Joseph went out through all the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Then he left Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout all the land of Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the earth brought forth heaps of produce. He collected all the food of these 7 years in the land of Egypt and stored it in cities. The food grown in the fields outside each city he stored in that city. Joseph stored grain in quantities like the sand of the seashore, so much that they stopped counting because it was beyond measure. 2 sons were born to Joseph before the year of the famine came. Osnat, the daughter of Pharaoh, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the firstborn Manasseh, causing to forget, because God has caused me to forget all the troubles I suffered at the hands of my family. The second he called Ephraim, fruit, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my misfortune. The 7 years of abundance in the land of Egypt ended, and the 7 years of famine began to come, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the lands, but throughout the land of Egypt there was food. When the whole land of Egypt started feeling the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you to do." The famine was over all the earth. But then Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold food to the Egyptians, since the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the countries came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe throughout the earth. How can we learn to love our Creator after reading Genesis 41? We can trust that dreams were a big deal in Genesis. Trust that Yehovah uses dreams for his purpose. Trust that Yehovah will remind those who forget at the right time. Trust that Yehovah will use your gifts and talents. Trust that Yehovah can bring you from the dungeon to the palace in minutes. Give Yehovah the glory for your gifts and talents. Ask Elohim to tell us what he will do in your life. Trust that Elohim fixes events and causes them to happen. Ask Yehovah for the wisdom of Yosef to produce and make a living. Plan ahead and store up for the bad years to come. Aim for the spirit of Elohim to live inside you. Aim to be discerning like Yosef. Trust that Yehovah Elohim Aleph Tav will put you in the place he has for you in his perfect timing. Therefore, trust. Trust that Yehovah can radically change your life in a single day and answer all your prayers in a single hour. Work for Yehovah in all that you do. Know that Yosef stored grain that was like the sand of the seashore, that he most likely built the pyramids. Aim to be fruitful and multiply even if you are in a foreign land. Aim to be a man or woman of character that is pleasing from the perspective of Yehovah. How can we love others as Yeshua loves us? We can use your gifts and talents to protect others in your life. Bear one another's burdens. We can become a food prepper. Produce spiritual fruit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, humility, and self-control. End with the Aaronic blessing. Yehovah will kneel before you presenting gifts, and he will guard you with a hedge of protection. Yehovah will illuminate the wholeness of his being toward you, bringing order, and he will provide you with love, sustenance, and friendship. Yehovah will lift up the wholeness of his being and look upon you and will set in place all you need to be whole and complete.